NFL Combine invites went out yesterday. Which frogs are going to Indianapolis to test out their skills and show what they can do in that situation? Were there any snubs? I'll list all the players that'll be there next on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Thanks for joining us. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts in its audio variety. NFL Combine invites went out yesterday, and 6 TCU players will be there testing out their skills, going through the process. Those names are Amani Bailey, the running back, Andrew Coker, offensive lineman, mainly played tackle in his career at TCU, Josh Newton, the corner, Nuke Bradford, our Millard Bradford, the senior safety, Brandon Coleman, interior offensive lineman, also played some tackle at TCU as well, and then Jared Wiley, the tight end. Those will be the guys that get to showcase their skills, go through the testing there at TCU. Or I should say they're going through the testing process at the NFL Combine. The only surprise that I had, Millard Bradford, he wasn't invited to the Senior Bowl. He wasn't invited to the East-West Shrine Game, so I'm really happy for him. I mean, great opportunity to go there. I mean, he'll have the pro day as well, but outstanding opportunity at the Combine to get in front of scouts, hopefully interview with some teams, show what he can do, show the athleticism. That'll be a huge deal. And then Jamie Plunkett from 247 Sports, he mentioned he was surprised that Mark Perry didn't get an opportunity because Mark Perry apparently had a really good week at the East-West Shrine Bowl, which is the Senior Bowl is kind of the premier all-star game, but the Shrine Bowl is right there with it. And it's a lot of more like day 2, day 3 prospects, but a lot of scouts there, coaches there, an opportunity to improve your stock. Perry did a really nice job there. So I was also surprised, after he mentioned that, thinking, okay, yeah, that would make sense for him to be there. Kind of odd that he wasn't, but great opportunity for Millard Bradford to show his skills. I was kind of looking around today at the different draft profiles because I know not everybody keeps up with this year round. It doesn't appear like, unless there's just some sort of huge rising in stock for one of these guys over the next few weeks and months, there's not going to be a day 1 guy here. Possibility for maybe a couple day 2 guys, but we're talking mainly 4th to 7th round undrafted free agents for a lot of the TCU players in this class of guys that are going to the NFL. But I was trying to kind of parse out, okay, who is getting the most buzz? And I've also put out a request to the Locked On NFL draft guys to see if they have any names that they're really targeting. But Brandon Coleman is the main name to know. I mean, Brandon going into the season, he was getting some like 1st or 2nd round buzz. I was hearing that from, people that there's so many guys now that just do draft coverage year round. That seems to have died down a little bit. But the Draft Network has him as a day 2 player, a possible adequate starter, strengths, good arm length, wingspan, good athleticism, good range as a blocker, functional strength. I think his athleticism, if he's completely healthy, should stand out really well at the Combine. And, I mean, listen, like 40 times for offensive linemen, it's definitely not the end-all, be-all. There's not a lot of situations we're going to be asking guys to sprint like that in that type of environment. But moving in tight spaces, being able to pull around, being able to reach, somebody that's on your outside shoulder or get to the second level and get a linebacker or safety and clear the way, those are all important things. Getting out there on screens, which is such a big part of offenses now and what they do. Brandon Coleman can do all that really adequately. The concerns here, consistent technique in pass protection and run blocking, maintaining balance while engaged with defenders. And he also, there's some position flex, even though I feel like he's going to project as an interior offensive lineman at the next level. That's just kind of my guess, given his size and what he's done during his time at TCU. But they moved him around a little bit depending on what his opportunities were. So hopefully that's something that can work to his advantage. The other guy that kind of came up as a day 2 potential, at least when I was looking at scouting reports, was Josh Newton. And Josh Newton had a really great career for the Frogs. Even last season when the team was struggling, teams didn't challenge him a ton. And so he did a good job for the most part. Teams didn't throw at him a lot. He was active at knocking the ball down and being a presence when he was challenged. But Newton is also getting some day 2 pick projections High IQ player. These are some of the strengths that were listed. Short area explosiveness, competitive, versatile in his alignment. The concerns, vertical contested catching situations. So those 50-50 balls. Josh is a little bit undersized for the corner position. So being able to go up and make plays on the ball against bigger receivers is going to be a challenging thing. And then also just down the field speed. But yeah, I mean, the competitiveness, the leadership, we've seen it all, right? Like we saw it 2 years ago when he immediately came in from Louisiana Monroe and became a leader on that team, on that TCU team that had such a special run. And then even last year was just always a vocal leader. I think he's someone that takes care of his business, that's going to prepare well, and should project well in the NFL. Amani Bailey, it was a little bit of a surprise when Amani declared for the draft, I think, to most people. And, it's one of those things, like as a running back, you have to be careful about what your shelf life is. You sort of have to strike while the iron's hot. Everybody has that mentality. But Amani had a really productive season last year, and he's shifty, he's quick. He's shown the ability to grow in a lot of the, I think, detail-oriented areas of the running back position, like pass protection. Here on the strengths package on his draft profile, acceleration, contact balance, sure hands, footwork. Now, the vision one is interesting because I feel like there were times last year where he missed opportunities to get yardage because he wasn't seeing the cutback lanes or the hole properly. And then just general, like it says wiggle here. So his movement, his ability to make things happen, and the concerns, size, pass protection, and then inconsistent patience, which I guess kind of coincides with that vision, just not always allowing plays to develop. He had a really good Senior Bowl, though. Had a good week of practice, was active in that game, was productive. I think he rushed for 50 yards, also had some receptions. And running back is one of those spots. I mean, it matters where you're picked to a certain extent, but teams are always trying to find value there because they think for the most part, you can kind of plug and play in a lot of situations. You don't have to have first-round special talent Bijan Robinson to be productive, even though that's cool if you can get those guys, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the prototype or where you take those players to have production in that position. So I think Amani's going to have a chance to make a roster. He's got some special tools. We saw Amari DiMercato have a really good season, even though he ended up being an undrafted free agent. And hopefully he does well in the testing and the 40 times and some of the cone drills and shuttle drills that show his ability and just his opportunity to move well in tight spaces. And I think one thing about Amani that surprised me last year in a positive way, I came into the season and I was like, he seems like a home run threat. My concern is, can he get tough yardage? Can he get positive yards, move the pile forward when there's not much there? Can he find a way, if it looks like it should be a 2-yard loss, to turn it into a 1-yard gain so it's 2nd and 9 instead of 2nd and 12? That's kind of the deeper level areas as a running back that you have to excel in. And I feel like he did a pretty good job of that last year. He bounced off tackles well, and he honestly didn't show as much of a home run threat as I thought he would last season, but his ability to just consistently, get positive yardage, get moving down the field, get first downs was a breath of fresh air for that offense last season. So good opportunity for him to get out there and show what he's got. Jared Wiley is another guy that I think is going to have a really good chance to make a roster and be a presence in the NFL. You can't teach that great size he has at 6'7", and that big target that he can be in the red zone. He's got the ability to separate. He's shown the ability to get open. I always felt like he was a little underutilized. Definitely 2 years ago, he was much more a part of the offense this season. I think the physicality at the point of attack and the run blocking has to get better. But I think Jared's a guy that teams are going to be high on once they get to see him in person and get a good feel for who he is. And he also had a good Senior Bowl. He didn't end up playing in the game itself, but he went through practice all week. I know he had some good catches in the one-on-one drills and showed that he can get separation, he can make plays. And if he can stay upright and get more yardage after the catch, show that ability, then I think that's going to go a long way in what he can do at the next level. So those are kind of the 4 guys that I sort of perused around and looked at their draft profiles. Andrew Coker and Miller Bradford, I think, are both kind of fringe draft pick guys who could really help themselves in the combine process and in the pro day process, just getting in front of people, getting to talk to them, having the ability to communicate like what they want to do, what they can do well, putting up good testing numbers. And I feel like Mark Perry falls in that category too. And I was thinking to myself, and I probably shouldn't do this on the spot like this because I feel like I'm going to forget somebody and someone will jump in and be like, "How, you idiot, how could you forget this person?" Which is fine. You can do that in the YouTube comments or on Twitter. I'm at some guy Steven. But I was trying to think in my mind who the main draft prospects will be coming into this upcoming year for TCU. Who are the guys that scouts are going to want to look at and get a good feel for what they can do? I think Savion Williams is going to be there. I think another wide receiver, Eric McAllister, is going to be someone who's going to get some looks from NFL scouts at the next level. On the defensive side, Dominic Williams will be draft eligible this year. So if he can have a more impactful year, really if any of those defensive linemen can find a way to make an impact rushing the passer, that's going to be huge. Devin Deal coming over from Tulane. I think he'll have some opportunities coming off the edge to impress scouts. And then on the offensive line, I feel like Bless Harris is going to get some looks just because of his size and the fact that he had a lot of starts at Florida State, and he should get really adequate opportunities at TCU as well to show what he can do. So those are some of the names that come to mind. And again, unfortunately, Caleb Alarms-Orr, the middle linebacker for the Frogs, I think he's going to be a special player. Nnamdi Obiazor has been super productive, or was super productive this past season, and he'll have a chance to kind of show his versatility and flexibility, hopefully, in Andy Avalos' defense. Those are the guys that immediately come to mind. Feel free to throw some other names out there, maybe some people that I missed. And I think those are the guys that are going to be on the radar, though. Plenty of players can put themselves on the radar with a huge season, and I think we've seen that the last couple of years. A number of these guys that end up at the combine or end up having opportunities to get drafted weren't necessarily the people going into the year that we thought would get it done, but just happened to put up a productive season and then get the attention of scouts and coaches alike. So that's coming down the pipeline. NFL Combine, those are the 6 names that'll be there when we come back. TCU basketball got a win on Monday. We'll talk about that and more next. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. All right, make sure you download the Gametime app today. Use that promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime app, promo code is Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime app is fantastic because it tells you exactly what seat you're going to be in and what your view is going to be from that seat before you buy. They have all-in prices that will show your total up front. So the other day I was actually looking at TCU baseball tickets, and the tickets themselves were $4. Once fees and everything got added in, it was like $17. But I clicked on it and it immediately showed me it's the total. So it wasn't telling me, hey, 2 tickets for $4, it's $8. And immediately told me, no, this is going to cost you $17 if you pay for it right now. But it's good to have that upfront assurance and that transparency through the process. And I also could see exactly where I was sitting, which, these were just general admission berm seats. That's why they were $4. But Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theaters, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Gametime users get $20 off with that promo code Locked On. Again, that's the Gametime app, promo code Locked On. $20 off the Gametime app. Proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Best place to get last-minute tickets. So I didn't talk about this on Tuesday's show because we did sort of a special one-off baseball preview with Jacob Sailors from the Lupton Drinking Club. I encourage you to go listen to that, though, if you haven't. If you want to get ready for TCU baseball season, which starts on Friday, and I'll have more about that in segment 3 as well. But 3-game series against Florida Gulf Coast at home. Florida Gulf Coast, formerly Dunk City, that had that great run in the tournament probably about a decade ago now. But anyway, a baseball team coming to TCU. They're going to kick off the season Friday, and I had a pretty extensive preview with Jacob Sailors there. Some good stuff, good information, So go check that out if you haven't. But I didn't get to talk about the TCU men. They played West Virginia on Monday night, and they won the game 81-65, and really a pretty businesslike effort from the Frogs. They were at 47-35 at halftime. They really never let that lead, get into single digits much at all in the second half. And aside from the first 10 minutes of that ball game where they really struggled to score and it was a tied game, West Virginia had, a small lead at times. They honestly controlled, the pace and the action from start to finish. And the big thing was the defense. I mean, honestly, from start to finish in that ball game, the defense was solid. Now, listen, West Virginia is not a very good team. They have won 3 conference games this year, but they're 3-8 in conference overall. They have a losing record on the season, but they do have some guys that can score. Raekwon Battle actually led both teams in scoring with 21 points on the night. And then they have a center who was kind of fun to watch, Jesse Edwards. He's averaging 14 a game this season. TCU did a nice job on him, and they held him to 6 points. But he's like a true old school big man. He's got like tape on his wrist. He shoots free throws one-handed. He's working in the post. I don't know. It was just funny to watch him and kind of fun to watch him play. Not a lot of guys like that and in basketball in general, but in the league that are working on the block. Hunter Dickinson, of course, at Kansas is making a living doing that and has for a long time and is doing it this year for KU. But the TCU bigs were really effective against Jesse Edwards, and they held him in check, again, to only 6 points. Really balanced scoring effort from the Frogs. 3 guys had 14 points. Jameer Nelson Jr. had a much better game. Trey Tennyson had 14. Emmanuel Miller with 14. Micah Peavy had 9. Jacoby Coles came off the bench and had 11 points. Jacoby Coles said after the game, as he continues to really kind of come into his own. And before the season, I mean, he was kind of the guy that everybody had on, at least on paper as like, okay, this is the dude that they're going to run their offense through. Now, it's very different. He's a very different player than Mike Miles or Damian Baugh, who were the main scorers the last few seasons. And those were point guards that had the ball in their hand all the time. Jacoby's different. I mean, he's a forward. And, you're going to have to like run him off screens and kind of get him ISO opportunities and feed him the ball in the high post or on the wings. But he's looked much more comfortable lately and has done a lot better job shooting, getting to the rim. And he said in the press conference after the game that he's been dealing with plantar fasciitis pretty much all year long, and that it's getting better, and it's finally at a point where he can kind of manage it and he feels more like himself, and it's showing. So that could be a big swing for this team if he becomes a more consistent scoring option, even though it feels like we're so far down the line in the season now that he's probably going to be coming off the bench for the majority of the year. But having scoring punch off the bench is still a nice thing, and it's still a big deal. And so he was a bright spot. A couple other guys that came off the bench gave them good minutes. Chuck O'Bannon had 6 points in 16 minutes and had a thunderous dunk at the end of that ball game. That was a great kind of exclamation point on a good night. And Xavier Cork was fantastic. He had 6 points on 3 of 6 shooting in 16 minutes, also had 4 rebounds. Jamie Dixon said after the game about at times they even kind of ran the offense through X, which is not something they've done very often in his career. And, Xavier's one of those guys. I mean, he has a couple of those games every season. You'd love for it to be more consistent. It hasn't been so far in his TCU career. Now, a couple of years back towards the end of the season when him and Aiden Lampkin were really playing well, that was a great 1-2 punch, and he was being effective. And Cork has shown some ability at times to like actually do some work in the post, in some post-up situations, getting his own shot, getting some buckets. Again, I think it's all situational. It's not something you want to do each and every night, run the offense through him. And they're probably going to do it sparingly. But it's a good option to have if he's playing well, and he gave them good minutes on Monday, both offensively and defensively. And Jameer Nelson Jr. with a nice bounce-back game. And he actually got put in the starting lineup in place of Avery Anderson. And Jamie was asked about that after the game. And Coach Dixon basically said, well, he said they're very similar, Anderson and Nelson, as far as what production they bring to the table. And he actually said from an analytics standpoint, their profiles are essentially identical. So they've been really the same type of player all year long. So they don't feel like they lose much when they switch it up. But it felt like Nelson definitely had more energy and effort in a starting role than coming off the bench. And Coach Dixon mentioned that he was much better on defense, and that sort of led to getting some open looks on offense. But he opened the scoring on Monday night with a corner 3. He had another 3 later in the first half. He had a really nice step back where there was a screen where Jesse Edwards, the center for West Virginia, was guarding him, and he broke him down off the dribble, stepped back at the free throw line, knocked down a really smooth jumper. So he looked very in control. Really good night all around for TCU basketball as they continue to go through the season here. Now 6-5 in conference play. A Saturday game, 11 a.m. tip against Kansas State. And this is one of those huge coin flip games. It's tough to win on the road. It's tough to win on the octagon, in the octagon of doom, as they call it there in Manhattan. All those caveats. Tough to win in the Big 12 on the road. All that's understood. But if you're going to have a team that wins 10 or 11 conference games, which is still in play here, this is one of those games you have to win. And we'll see what they can do when they get down there and play Kansas State at 11 a.m. on Saturday. But big opportunity to, win one of those 50-50 games down the stretch that is going to be pivotal in determining really, making the tournament first of all, but then just seeding after that and hopefully avoiding, a 7 or 8 or 10 seed potentially if they can find a way to finish over 500 in Big 12 play. When we come back, I'll talk a little bit more about baseball starting the season on Friday. Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. All right, let's get into it with FanDuel. The NBA season is in full swing. Luka Doncic, the Mavericks, are playing a little better lately. Have won a few games in a row, made some trades. Changed up their lineup a little bit. Might be a good time to bet on the Mavs. New customers, if you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, one $5 bet, you got to win it. But if you put one $5 bet down and win that bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. Again, $150 in bonus bets with one winning $5 bet. That's the type of great deals you get at FanDuel. And you can do quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, or you can just keep it simple and bet on the money line of the games themselves. FanDuel.com/lockedon or that FanDuel app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. FanDuel, official betting partner of the NBA and proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So I talked with Jacob Sailors on Tuesday about TCU baseball, and the Frogs kick off their season opening day is Friday. Should be fun. Get a chance to watch them in action again. And Kirk Sarloos announced the rotation on the Lupton Drinking Club podcast earlier this week. It's going to be Peyton Tole, the Wichita State transfer, is a two-way player. He's going to pitch, and he's also going to hit in the middle of that lineup. Cole Klecker, who was outstanding for them last season. And then Zach Morris, the Arkansas transfer, who had a rough year from an ERA perspective in the Arkansas bullpen last season, but had a really good fall and good spring. They're hopeful that he can turn it around and be a force for them this upcoming season. They also brought in Ben Hampton, the West Virginia transfer, who got a lot of buzz this offseason because he's made a ton of starts in his career, 41 starts in Big 12 play, and was, the most consistent person on that West Virginia staff the last few seasons. And he's going to start the year in the midweek role on Tuesdays. Ben Abelt is your closer. Hunter Hodges ended the season in the back of that bullpen. He's going to start the season hopefully healthy and will be, an eighth inning, seventh inning type of guy that's available for them this year. A number of transfers will also get opportunities out of the bullpen as well. Luis Rodriguez is a guy who made a lot of starts last year and will presumably start the year in the pen. Kirk mentioned that they might switch things up on Tuesdays depending on the matchup, but I like where they're going with this rotation. Now, you have to always have the caveat. This is, it's the beginning of the season, which means things change. There's injuries every year. The last few years, Marcelo Perez stepped in a couple years back and became their Saturday guy and really carried them through a lot of the season. Last season, and I totally forgot about this, to be honest, but your Friday night starter was Ryan Vanderhyde, the transfer from Kansas. And he looked really good in his first game, but then things went downhill and he got injured. He had to be removed from the rotation completely. They tried to get him back in there. It didn't work. Cam Brown started the year in the rotation and eventually kind of worked his way back, but he had a lot of ups and downs and had to bow out at different points. Cole Klecker had a really good bullpen outing against Florida State and then got an opportunity to start and took the ball and never let go of it. Luis Rodriguez kind of found himself in that same situation middle of the season and did a really nice job until towards the end of the year where he had an injury. Sam Stoutenborough was a guy that was kind of up and down through the year, and then by the end of the season, he was one of your most consistent arms, and he became one of your starters. But honestly, that team made it to Omaha last year with essentially two starters. It was Klecker and Stoutenborough, and Cam Brown hopefully can give you some innings on a third day, and then you're going to go heavy bullpen from then on out. And they survived and they made it work. And they made it work because they swept through the regional, they swept through the supers, and then even when they got to Omaha, they found a way to kind of mix and match and win some games, even though they had a thin rotation. This staff, at least on paper, looks a lot deeper going into the year. And hopefully they stay injury-free and those guys are productive and as advertised, and they can carry that throughout the season. But it feels like if something goes wrong, you have more arms to fall back on this time, which is a big deal. And so it should be fun when they take the field for the first time against Florida Gulf Coast. Again, that game on Friday night at 6:30. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team, and we do it here every day.